This video was sponsored by Skillshare. Everybody grab your tissue boxes, it's time to say farewell to Tennant's glorious incarnation of the Doctor. This is Russell's final writing credit for the show, even Bernard Cribbins and John Simm came back for one final farewell. Everything is on course for a grand operatic finale that will end the golden era of the show with a bang. So what went wrong? Sure, I cried like a big blubbering baby by the end of part 2, but what about everything else? The Time Lords, the Doctor holding a gun, Super Mario Sunshine.
Cheese and chips, and meat and gravy, and cream and beer, and pork and beef and fat and great big chunks of hot and wet and red.
Oh, what? No grilled cheese? But I love grilled cheese, especially ones I've learned how to make on Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community where millions come together to take the next step in their creative journey. Whether you design, photograph, illustrate, write, animate, or just simply want to start a little hobby, Skillshare has a class for you. For a man of simple tastes like myself, the perfect grilled cheese, a mini class to master the sandwich by Ilana Karp, made my grilled sarnies top tier quality. Skillshare offers membership with meaning. There are enough classes for a lifetime of learning designed for real life and all the circumstances that come with it. Skillshare has no ads and are always launching new premium classes for you to enjoy. You get all of this for £7 a month with an annual subscription, and for a limited time you can use my link in the description to get a free trial of Skillshare Premium membership. So go ahead and click the link in the description below to start your learning experience. Now, without further ado, let's get on with the review. The episode starts with a nod to the opening of the episode Rose, before I suddenly tripped and fell over, remembering... Oh no, these are Christmas episodes, aren't they? I guess it's fitting though, given Tennant's first adventure was also a Christmas episode. Wilf is seen doing his Christmas shopping before wandering into some random church. It's the TARDIS! This scene feels very odd given the sudden mute carol singers and disappearing Time Lady, but sets up the return of the Doctor in as biblical fashion as they possibly could. Then the Doctor gets back from some holiday they didn't manage to make an episode out of. The playful music was quite effective at placing us in the point of view of Ood Sigma, impatient for the plot to start going, but relishing in our envy of an adventure never had. Even the TARDIS locking joke presents us with a changed Doctor, evidently unable to face his inner demons until this point. I'm guessing this was just to make the TARDIS more like a sports car, as has been previously joked about in the show. Then the Doctor takes ayahuasca with the big brain Ood and realizes the Master is also returning. That one little tease shot from the end of Series 3 has finally paid off. After much confusion, I realised that in The Last of the Time Lords, the Doctor cremated the Master on Earth. Nothing is truly disclosed about the particulars of the location of the cremation, and the backdrop always gave me the impression he took the Master back to Malcasero at the end of the universe, thus preventing a resurrection. Either way, the scene itself is rather prophetic, and gives a memory jog to all those that forgot the Master showed up 2 years prior. I was quite confused as to what exactly the end of time meant. I'm assuming that the phrase was Russell's final attempt to outdo himself after sending the Doctor to the end of the universe. Instead, the phrase is some vague term that only amounts to the Doctor's incarnation running out of time. Then a bunch of Saxon neo-Nazis bring Saxon's wife along to their resurrection ceremony. I honestly found this whole section to be a bit of a joke. Not sure if that's the whole point, but the performances weren't really selling it for me, and the idea that some of the Master's DNA would still be left over on Lucy Saxon's body felt like a bit of a stretch too.
As it was written.
Only Link can defeat Ganon.
Melodrama seems to perpetually fall out of Alexandra Moen's mouth alongside all the mustache-twirling women. Well, if they had mustaches, believe me, they'd be twirling them. All the special effects looked tragic as well. They constructed a CGI prison, we saw topless John Simm in a vortex, and then all this drivel was topped by Lucy's sudden reversal.
And all this time your disciples have prepared, but so have we!
Which just cracked me up. I guess it's fitting given that it's normally the Master who has a plan behind the plan, so to speak, but I was not a fan of this resurrection scene, to be honest with you.
Till death do us part, Harry!
It confused me that a time traveller would ever be in a rush to be anywhere, but this is where they introduce our billionaire and daughter. We don't find out that he's a billionaire until 48 minutes in, but the pair's relationship was straight up weird. I mention this because there's so little else to go on with these two. First, they're seen watching rare and exclusive footage of Bigfoot, and turns out they just happen to be big fans of the Master. Well, isn't that convenient? Meanwhile, Wilf got on a bus to hang out with his friends. I honestly thought the segment with Minnie was hilarious, and poor old Wilf just trying to find some bloke. He must look like he's lost the plot. Like Donna in Partners in Crime, he uses the means available to him to track down the Doctor. Unfortunately, the bad dreams idea doesn't really strike me as being that much of a decent plot device. Of course, everybody has bad dreams. I just wish they could have been more surreal and creative than just the Master laughing over and over again. Oh yeah, and this episode can get repetitive as heck.
You will join. You will join. You will join. You will join.
Never dying. Never dying. Never dying. Never dying. Never dying. Dinner time!
As discussed in these reviews, repetition is commonly used with intention and can even induce fear. However, in this episode, it honestly feels like they're just using it for the sake of it. Then we reach this lovely location I like to call the dump. I really don't know what's so ginger about this kid. Maybe they should fire the casting director, but like, are these two just homeless? I get what this pair are meant to represent, but because they're so disposable, all their dialogue seems completely bland and pointlessly funny.
Isn't that funny?
Oh yeah, speaking of funny.
I am hilarious! I am the funniest thing in the whole wide world!
Good God. They can have model skeletons, but this blue flashing CGI skull thing looked awful. How many burgers do you reckon John Sim had to stuff his face with for these shots? Then the Doctor showed up at the dump where the pair have a good sniff and then chase each other like two little kids. Fortunately, some adults come along and Minnie, the menace, oh my God, she is so funny. Unfortunately, this chase sequence between the Doctor and the Master is just halted whilst Wilf takes him for a coffee. All the fun and excitement of the Master returning, and this scene is just kind of wedged in here, as though they needed to justify Wilf's guest appearance in this episode. Don't get me wrong, I love him being here for the final story, but due to the bizarre pacing that is going on in this episode, I find it hard to get behind the emotion they're trying to induce in this scene. Then the Doctor goes back to the dump again with some prepare your anus monologue from Rassilon, the Time Lord. The Master's resurrection leaves him looking more like Tim from Spaced than anything else, and has highly inaccurate, highly ineffective lightning hands as well. Why? I think we know why, because then he gets to kill Rassilon. Never mind. Then the pair started reminiscing, and the whole thing felt like familiar territory.
Do you remember my father's land back home?
Nope. I'm not really sure the whole madness thing works for the Master's character either. We sort of have that in his previous episodes, but had they taken a more pitiful approach, like that of Gollum perhaps, I might have taken to his character a bit more. The only real pitiful aspect of him is his continued suffering he experiences from the never-ending drumbeat, a mystery that will be uncovered in part 2. I think that it might have been worthwhile dragging out the Master's revival throughout the whole of this first episode, because his return does feel somewhat aimless. There was a high point in the scene when the Master finally made it clear his tormenting drumbeat sound isn't a symptom of madness, but, like the Doctor, he too appears to be waiting for some prophecy to come along. Christmas morning rolls along, and I loved that they put Sylvia in that same hideous red nightgown as the hypothetical Christmas we saw her wearing in Turn Left. More prophecy stuff wiggled its way into this scene, like Donna getting a biography of the billionaire and the Time Lady appearing on TV. I think it was effective dressing up the Time Lady to look like the Queen, for she is allegedly divine and is somebody Wilf evidently looks up to as an authoritative figure. Unfortunately, it just reminded me that not an awful lot had actually happened in the 40-odd minutes I'd been sat watching this. Even seeing the Noble family chasing the Doctor off the property made me think, well, it looks quite warm for Christmas, doesn't it? However, Wilf has possibly the best first encounter with the TARDIS interior in the whole revival.
Do you like it?
I thought it'd be cleaner.
Now is also the time they connect this random dad and daughter to the Master. I had this horrible reminder of those Spyfall episodes from this year where another vague billionaire character teamed up with the Master for their own nefarious ends. Only after the Doctor and Wilf arrive at the property does Wilf say that the Joshua fella is a billionaire with a private army. Of course, we never actually see this private army or learn how he got his fortune. I guess we should have read his autobiography. So these people found some alien thing at the bottom of a mountain, and then it's the Master's feeding time. The feeding frenzy sort of comes off as funny, but in this scene it truly became laughable, and not really in a good way either. Did these people know about his insatiable hunger and had a whole flipping turkey ready and waiting to be eaten?
The immortality gate, because that's what I want. Not for me, but for my daughter. I want her never to die.
So, you never want her to die?
I want her never to die.
Or do you want her to never die?
Never die!
Just as we were about to learn some more about what on earth is going on here, they decided to introduce 2 more characters who I found just detestable.
Excuse me, sir.
Do you need to go for a wee-wee?
If you'll just excuse me.
Sounds like you have an overactive bladder, laddie. You should see a doctor. So the Slitheen perfected the skin suit thing, and another bunch of aliens found a way to do the whole process by just tapping their watches. These prosthetics look cheap as hell too. They look like...
Oh my lord, she's a cactus.
Took the words right out of my mouth, Wilfred. Then it's revealed that the device the Master's just fixed by magic is just an instant global application of nanogenes. Russell obviously couldn't quite bring himself to use the term because they were created by his soon-to-be successor. Instead of the templates being a gas mask boy though, it's the Master, and suddenly the whole world is the Master. Even Barack Obama becomes the Master. Quite frankly, all that stuff with Obama was pretty cringe-inducing, and even all the transforming was a bit odd too. Batwing sound effects, quick overlay fades. Of course, the payoff for it all is just hysterical. John Sim in everybody's clothes clapping away must have been a blast to film. Even the Master race comment was perfect, given the underworld of fanatics he has, or had, would probably have believed in such nonsense too. Now, this would have been a wonderful place to leave the episode as a cliffhanger, but our Lord and Saviour Rassilon has to have the final word, tickling our balls to stay tuned because the Time Lords are a-comin'. I'm sorry, but these shots look bloody awful. This group with Rassilon started out so dark that by the time the money shot appeared, you ended up wondering if all the other Time Lords were just left in the dark until he finished his speech. So, did it suck? Unfortunately, part 1 leaves an awful lot to be desired. It's nice to be back in familiar territory, but this episode is ball-tickling at best. Without a doubt, the best parts of part 1 come from Sim and Cribbins, but everything else felt very stagnant and anticipatory. Even the Doctor did bugger all in this episode. The only mystery left to solve is... where are the Teletubbies? I mean, the Time Lords. Most of the special effects have not aged well, and none of the characters introduced in this story had much weight for me. I wouldn't even say I enjoyed this episode, truth be told. A dragged out, repetitive, uninteresting start. Maybe part 2 will make it all worthwhile. 3 out of 10. Surprise! The Time Lords aren't dead, and Gallifrey looks like garbage. I can forgive all the dated CGI walking shots, but it's this council chamber that bugs me the most. You hype up the Time Lords for a whole episode and then film them in a room that is just surrounded by black. This is what filming in a studio looks like when your set designers don't show up. Maybe this is the start of me turning to the classic Who dark side, but I honestly prefer the image of Rassilon being this old Chinese emperor figure, shrouded in thick foggy mystery. Then this Dalek Khan Time Lord equivalent started having orgasms about the Earth, which popped up as an image on their table, just in case they needed reminding, I guess. Forgive me for finding such a simple addition to this empty scene to be so hilarious, but it just kept getting funnier. Seeing the Doctor and Wilf tied up cracked me up, in a good way. It's just like in Last of the Time Lords when the Doc was put in that bird cage. The Chinese army shot though just made me want to vomit, with the whole world being the Master Master, I was surprised that they would all be so subservient to the original copy. The King of Chaos seems to be operating things in a rather orderly fashion. I began to think I was just watching a really bad pantomime unfolding in front of me. I say bad because it lacks a whole bunch of familiar characters. If the world got turned into the Master, what about Martha, Mickey, Jack? Are they all the Master too? I think that would have left a more lasting impression for me instead of seeing Wilf's mate on the estate and the billion-quid Electra complex. Anyway, things ticked upwards as soon as Donna was revealed to be the only other person not affected by the transformation. This rings alarm bells for the audience, as we know she can never remember the things she witnessed in time and space. The playing with Earth Girls comment was great, and Donna was unwillingly saved by the meta crisis. Then we had the most brilliant bit where they juxtaposed the Doctor beaming away behind a muzzle with Wilf's cries of fear. Unfortunately, they then pushed a big fat reminder of the Master being forced to stare into the time vortex. Thankfully, our exposition-ridden Time Lords gave the reveal with an uncomfortable close-up shot on Timothy Dalton's face. The idea of it just being the Time Lord's hearts beating, that's a really primordial idea. That the root of the Master's evil is his fear. That was fantastic. Then our green friend showed up at the perfect time to rescue the Doc and Wilf. We had the final Segway chase motif, this time the Doctor's strapped to it and being pushed. The four of them beam themselves up to a spaceship where Wilf sees the Earth from space. Oh, they love those pull away to CGI establishing shots, don't they? All the unit shots looked pretty diabolical too, and by the time this new equilibrium was reached, even Wilf started losing the plot.
Nice little bit of the old Doctor flim-flam.
20 minutes in, and the Time Lords were still sitting in that council chamber, and they decided to throw a jewel towards the Earth. It's certainly a testament to how powerful these beings are, especially considering that this is the means of moving Gallifrey into the solar system and thereby ending the time lock thing. Oh, I get it now. It's not the end of time, it's the end of the time lock. Then we got the most amazing scene between the Doctor and Wilf. This conversation was perfectly placed in this downtime as they awaited the arrival of the Time Lords. Wilf, thinking about his wife buried and how the Master may have turned all the corpses of the Earth into him. The Doctor can't even give Wilf a concrete answer, only able to apologize on behalf of the individual he is supposed to be responsible for. You don't really grasp how disturbing the transformation is until you hear it from Wilf. There's also this admiration the pair share for each other, having more in common than we initially thought. Both are old and neither have fired a gun to kill as far as I can recall. There's this fantastic slow zoom with the Doctor lamenting how murderous he could potentially be, his face full of regret and holding back the rage that burns inside him. The solution is right in front of them. Kill the Master. The fact the Doctor rejects the gun even when it's placed into his hand was so commendable. Even with the prospect of killing one to save billions, this is something the Doctor will not even entertain. The sacrifice he's making is stubborn yet beautiful, matching alongside Wilf not wanting him to die. Our own sense of empathy kicks in here, matching Wilf's utter misery. We don't want the Doctor to die, despite knowing that in 30 minutes or so, he will undergo a permanent change. Even though the cycle will repeat itself, we don't want the story to end.
Gallifrey rises! Gallifrey rises!
I mean, I am, for one, looking forward to the end of this sort of garbage. The ship boots up again, and we get the closest to Star Wars the show has ever gotten. And I don't mean Jack sitting in the Mos Eisley cantina either. Wilf is tasked with shooting down oncoming threats in this trench run scenario, whilst the Doctor's in charge of evasive maneuvers. To think this was what fighting off the entire planet would look like. I guess it would be unfair to expect much from this sequence, but the final moment with the Doctor jumping ship, clinging to the gun, that was a sight to behold. Not only was the timing perfect, but seeing him scarred, covered in glass. This is not the sort of thing you see every day in Doctor Who, nor are the Time Lords for that matter, which, for the remainder of the episode, are just stuck in front of a white backdrop. It's black for a council chamber, it's white for everything else. Jesus Christ. Anyway, Rassilon pulls out his Thanos glove and turns everybody back to normal. This was quite the significant moment, albeit a bit convenient, given how the Master just ruined everything on Earth in an attempt to do the same to the Time Lords. All those hopes of revenge are wiped out with a snap of the fingers, or a shake of the wrist, your pick. Obviously, Rassilon is painted as a villain from the offset in this story, but I think that his character could have done with a bit more flexibility. I think the turnaround that the Time Lords seek domination, corrupted by the Time War, was an interesting take on these mythological beings. However, instead of them being at their wits' end fighting the Time War, it looked to me, as with the other two Time Lords, like they were just sitting around, waiting for their oh-so-blessed prophecy to arrive. The apocalyptic scenario we're faced with is somewhat frightening. Unfortunately, new planets in the sky has already been done, and even the panicking people in the streets thing has also been done to death too. Had they postponed the dramatics and instead chosen a means of oppressing the now returning to normal humans, we could have seen something truly mind-bending. In my mind, throwing Gallifrey at the Earth would simply kill everyone, including the Time Lords. If they wanted to survive, why are they trying to destroy both themselves and the Earth in the process? Anyway, Wilf makes it to the room where it happens, and I completely missed the moment he locked himself into the radiation room thing. It's probably because I was distracted by all the shots of the Doctor pointing the gun at one Time Lord and then another. It's shot fantastically and ramps up the tension because we know deep down he's not going to pull the trigger. It's also easy to forget how changed the Doctor is. After the Mars debacle, he's going to have done God knows what just to put off this very moment. Now that he's here, the choice is his. Neither choice has a good outcome, but Dalton really plays up the lunacy of what we're witnessing here.
The final act of your life is murder.
And then this Time Lady reveals her face with that oh-so-familiar music. The identity of this individual is enough to make the Doctor reconsider whose life he will take, without explicitly saying who she is. Is this his mother? His daughter? Her position here was interesting considering she had her hands covering her eyes all throughout these episodes, probably doing some Time Lord trickery to make sure Wilf was around with his pistol. The Doctor ends it all by blowing up the machine with the diamond inside. I have no idea who was calling out, but seeing the Master blasting back at the Time Lords for making him warrior material was so satisfying to watch. They present the Master in part 1 with this collar around his neck, giving him this animalistic vibe. This came full circle as the Master literally became the master of those that kept him on a leash. It's brilliant. But you know what happens next, and fuck me, it is absolutely jaw-dropping. A proclamation of survival, and then we remember Wilf, and the score turns into something hideous as the Doctor's triumph becomes misery in seconds. The shot moves elegantly and literally shifts the focus from the Doctor to Wilf. I loved that the conversation the pair had earlier on the ship paid off here, with Wilf offering to sacrifice himself. The Doctor's reaction to this is so heartbreaking, his voice breaking this line.
I could do so much more! So much more!
There's even regret ringing in his ears. His lashing out how little reward he receives for saving the Earth, the universe, each and every time was fantastic. Like with Eccleston, the Doctor absorbs a lethal dose of energy in order to save his companion. The red lighting and the way the Doctor curls up into a ball in his chamber indicates a form of rebirth, painting a horrifically sad picture here. He may not have regenerated yet, but the beginnings of change start to become apparent, wiping his face clean. For some reason, Donna's new boyfriend is deaf as a doorpost when the TARDIS materializes, but I loved that Donna finally acknowledged how she never gets the chance to see anything important when it comes to encounters with the third kind on Earth. Then the final segment with the Doctor's reward absolutely broke me. Every time I watch this, I end up a blubbering mess. 10 years on and I'm still crying at that stupid scene at the book signing. What is wrong with me?
Was she happy in the end?
Yes, she was. Were you?
I still don't understand the Mickey and Martha getting married thing, but what's important is that we are seeing all this through the perspective of companions, characters, friends and family we've met along this near 5-year journey. It doesn't make logical sense why Mickey and Martha are saddened by being saved, but we too will cradle our loved ones at the prospect of the Doctor regenerating. It's even more than that though. We, with one particular exception, will never see these characters ever again in the show. They too are being erased from the TV screen, and that is frightening. I found Jack's scene in the bar was totally fitting with all the other hideous imaginary conjurings the show has concocted. Even Alonzo Alonzi winds up here. Although it comes off as a very cheeky scene, undoubtedly both men will need some company in their time of grief. Best of all was Donna finally getting happily married. It was saddening that Donna had made all of these friends through the Doctor that obviously didn't make it to this wedding. Her very best friend made it, but didn't stick around for very long and couldn't even say hello. I loved that he went back in time to borrow £1 from Donna's father just to get her the winning lottery ticket. What father wouldn't want financial security for their daughter, especially if he could give it to her on her wedding day? What a fucking hero the Doctor is, worthy of such a crushingly emotional salute. This shot of the Doctor placed among the gravestones, filmed at a distance, shows that his death is imminent. And just as though they hadn't twisted the knife enough, they take us back to where it all began. The Powell estate. The music, so familiar and so beautifully placed, pulling on the heartstrings. I completely forgot this little scene was in here. Seeing the Doctor now enveloped by darkness, Rose mistaking his suffering for drunkenness, it is perfect. They top that off with the Planet of the Ood score ringing through as the Doctor struggles to get back into the TARDIS. Remember when Mr. Halpin's hair started falling out? The same music is heard here, egging on the transformation, but with the social assistance of the Ood. I believe that the Doctor seeing all those he helped and travelled with gave him reason to carry on. Seeing the TARDIS flying away from the Earth, saying goodbye to that familiar transition, the infinite realm of possibility lies ahead.
I don't want to go.
The feeling was very much mutual, Ten. Those 4 words are etched into my mind to this day, and even the explosiveness of this regeneration is commendable. The whole set being on fire, collapsing in on itself, and one of the finest Doctors to grace our screens turns into the youngest Doctor who has ever graced our screens. Matt Smith's first appearance is certainly enticing, with the hyperactive reaction to everything that's going on and his soon-to-be catchphrase, Geronimo. Oh, it's great. We'll just have to wait and see how his incarnation held up, won't we? Oh, sorry, are you waiting for that clip I always play from Night of the Doctor? Not gonna happen this time. I've got to curl up in bed and eat some Ben & Jerry's now. Goodbye. So, did it suck? Without a doubt. Part 2 is a slam dunk compared to Part 1's dribble. One of the main issues with the story as a whole is the pacing. Cut the end of time down to a single 1 hour or 90-minute episode, and I think it might have been more bearable. Part 2 can be a bit rocky, but there are so many great scenes and emotions flying around here too. The Time Lords always seem to leave a lot to be desired as well, and apart from all the dated special effects, the story really picks up in this episode and crescendos with emotion by the end. The Doctor's reward segment feels like another episode entirely. As far as I'm concerned, the last 20 minutes of Part 2 would get a straight 10 from me. Unfortunately, there's a lot of tedious stuff to get through beforehand, with a couple of amazing scenes sprinkled in there too. I give The End of Time, Part 2, an 8 out of 10. Thanks for watching. What do you think about these episodes? Comment below your thoughts or join us for a Benny on my Discord server, where we'll continue this discussion.